Within the last few classes, I remember you talked about how this class used to be more of like a social hub, and like you discussed a lot of social issues, and then from there it sparked a lot more activism and stuff on campus. And then you said
the activists came here more so. Yeah.
Well, you still said it was like a hub, and that
it was a hub.
It would continue to spark conversations outside the class and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then you said that there's like a shift, and you didn't see that as much anymore. And like my question was, what do you think happened? Why?
Well, one is, I think social media like really changes things, that a lot of you all can be doing activism, on your phones from your rooms. Like, you don't need other people, and you don't need to get together, right? You can just do, a lot of you are very involved. You're involved back home. Whether your home is on the other side of the world or your home is, an hour away. And you get involved like that. And so you never establish the kind of connections that you would normally establish at a place like this. Back in the day, going back 20 years or so, it was like, you come here to Penn State, you get dropped off or however it is, and you're here, man. You're going to find your family here. And then you're going to connect. And there were plenty of groups that were really going to be really connected. And the race conversation was different then as well. Like, so there were a lot of, like, the groups, the groups of students who of minoritized groups, right? They were much more engaged, like really engaged, pushing things, like, I don't know if you all know about the takeover of the hub back in 2001, right? The Village just had a 20-year anniversary. Does anyone do you even know about that? Anyone? All those students were our TAs. All the students that took over the hub, that did the whole thing, they were all TAs. I mean, they was just like all happening, you know what I mean? So it's really intense, and that's just different now. Yeah, it's not better or worse, because you all are really active and doing a lot of things elsewhere. But I would say that that's really kind of what it is.
I know you've been teaching Soch for many years now. What's your background? Like, what's your story? How did you come into this profession? Did you always want to do this as a child? And like, how did you get into this profession of being a professor?
Yeah, that's a good question. When you go to grad school in a research university like Penn State, the way we get professors is we train them, right? So we have graduate students, we give them a stipend, we give them free tuition, and then we give them a small stipend, right? And then those who can like publish and teach and do all the research and stuff, they kind of rise to the top. Other people sort of go in other directions, but then those then become the professors, right? I don't rise to the top. I don't mean like that, like they're better than, but they go a certain direction, right? But a lot of us, when you go to grad school, this is what you do, right? This is how you get grad school paid for. And it's not true of professional schools, right? But like research tracks is what it is. And so for me, my job as a grad student from when I was 24 years old, 23, 24, was teaching. They paid me. That was what I did to pay my way, to give back to the university. In fact, the first class I taught was a class on cybernetics. In 1984, I was 24 years old. And I walked in the classroom. There were 70 students in the classroom. And I walked in and I said, does anybody know what cybernetics is? And nobody did. And I said, well, I don't either. But, whatever, we'll figure it out, okay? That's been the kind of person that I am my whole life. It's like, we'll figure it out. We'll work it out, right? So anyway, I fell in love with sociology just by accident in a way. Well, in part, I took one class, social psychology, that utterly fascinated me. And I just said, okay, I got to take another class. And then before I knew it, I was a social major. And then I wasn't thinking about a job because I'm like, whatever, I don't care about a job. I just want to live, right? And then I went to grad school and so on and so forth. And I wasn't really intending to be a professor per se, but I was always teaching as part of my stipend, to pay my way. And so that's how I got into teaching. And the reason I got into this class, in a way, is because, first off, as a kid, I was always really interested in people all over the world. My mom was, right? Like, my mom, she had a high school education, right? But she loved food. And she knew that she liked food from all different cultures. And she always wanted to go to restaurants where they didn't speak English, because she had the idea. Like, if she went to an Indian restaurant, she's like, I want it where they're speaking in Hindi or something, or some other dialect, right? I don't want to go where they're Americans talking, you know what I mean? Like, because that means it's the real thing. So she always took me to these restaurants where people didn't speak English. And like, we would eat Syrian food and Lebanese food, and then I fell in love with just talking to people at different cultures, right? I always knew people of different cultures, and I just was fascinated by it. And then I started traveling more, and then I got more comfortable with it. And then by the time I started teaching this class, I was already just fascinated by people in the world, and I had a lot of multicultural and multiracial experiences in my life that I made sure that I had. And so, and then now, I mean, one of the things that I have a lot is that I'm like, yeah, I just love it. That's why I do this, because I want to meet people. You know what I mean? I want to meet people from around the world. So that's how I got into sociology and how I got into this.
Do you ever, I guess, I'm just wondering what you think about being kind of a white person teaching a race and ethnicity class. Like, how do you think that affects the class? Or do you ever, like, struggle with that idea? Or, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I don't struggle with it. Here, let me first say, like, how it affects it. One, the fact that I'm a man means that men are, on average, this isn't true of every man. I'm going to generalize you men, but you're more willing to hear certain things that I say than if I was a woman. Okay, that I know. My colleagues who are women, the kinds of things they get challenged on, it's just really, it's unbelievable to me. It's almost laughable sometimes, right? And my own wife, right? I mean, she taught, it's like we would compare, Anyway, so the fact that I'm white means that white people here are more willing, most white people, the vast majority, I would say, are more willing to hear the kinds of things, some stuff that I'm saying, than it would be if I were black or brown, like say. The fact that I have an American accent and dialect, a middle American dialect from Ohio, means that people are more likely to be open to some things that I'm saying, right? So we start right there. There's a certain, it's not a privilege per se. I mean, but it is for sure awareness, because if I were a black woman teaching this class, I'd have to have I don't know if this is for true, but I'm gonna say it is true. First off, I'd have to be really funny. I'd have to have a really unique personality to get people to just fill up a room like this, right? First off, I had to be really smart, which there are plenty of black women at Penn State who are really, really smart. I'd have to be really funny. I'd have to be really self-effacing. So you got to have all these things here. And even then, with all those things, and I could be like the smartest of the smart. I mean, far more credentials and whatever than I have. And yet, the kinds of challenges that she would get that I don't get would be striking. Would be just striking. And this is one of these things when people's like, well, no, but I wouldn't be like that. I would listen. I'm like, no. This is what sociology teaches us, right? So, so in that sense, I have a certain there's a certain opening for me that, again, other people can have, right? I mean, it's like the reason I'm teaching this class isn't because there are other people lined up to teach it. Aren't people lined up to teach this class. You know, the reason I'm still here over the years is because like nobody wanted to teach it. It's like people are like, no, hey, I'm not. No. And black people, brown people, white people, everyone's just like, no. I'm like, no, go ahead, you're all good. So, but you know, I have colleagues who I've like really, anyway, so that's the longer story, right? I think that there are lots of people who are not white, who could teach the class, but this is a half international focus. They don't have even a fraction of the international global experience that I have.
So you're a professor at Penn State, and like your class is on stream. So basically, everyone in the world can have access.
They could have access.
And you're
to
also the co-founder of World in Conversation. So you're doing a lot of stuff. What's your end goal of life? And like, what is your philosophy? Like, okay? So I would say, what's your end goal, and what do you value the most in life?
So listen, let me just say my end goal is when it's time for me to die, assuming I don't die a sudden death, but when it's time for me to die, my end goal is in that period of time living up to me dropping my body. My end goal is that I'm really okay with it, whether it happens next week or whenever. But that's my end goal, really. And as I get older, I realize it's harder to have that. That's a really easy goal when you're young. It's a much more problematic goal when you're older. As a teacher, my end goal is I came alive in a classroom. Like I came alive. Like I became me in a classroom. And when I walk into a classroom, my end goal is to spark that thing in people that just they turn their brain on and they can't turn it off. That's all I'm trying to do. Yeah. Bro.
Okay. I just have a curious question. It's about your career, about how many times you are being reported or threatened just during your career, and would you mind to share your the memorable experience in that?
Okay, how many emails have I gotten that just start out with like "fuck you," right?
Yep.
You should die, or my wife even get an email. You're married to this guy. Fuck you. I hope you die a horrible cancerous death. This kind of thing. Yeah, I've gotten more than a lot of those, and they don't sit with me too much. I mean, after a while, it's really hard to get those, but that's the price of putting stuff out into the world. I get far more emails from people from all over the world, high school students, people in their 60s and 70s, any number of people. There are people that watch videos, they watch the stream. So many high school kids watch the stream, and they're like, "Oh my God, like I'd love watching your class." You know, like they're 15 years old, and then I'll jump on and I'll be like, "Hey man, do you want to Skype? Like, come on, how old are you? 15? Like, okay, let's talk. You want to Zoom together?" And then they're like, "Oh my God," and we have a lot of fun. I enjoy that. That's like if you ever get to have the experience of being kind like that to people, like being in a position where somebody really wants to could do that, it's a lovely thing. So yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Out of all the classes you've taught, what was your favorite semester?
The favorite semester was the one when Bassem came. Yeah. Just because Bassem came, it was like, oh my God. And that class with Bassem that you all watched, I think that was the favorite class I've ever done in my life. Yeah. But the class though we did with Maliha and her father this semester, that was like, that was amazing. Classes like that, that's the reason I get up in the morning. Yeah, Maliha, tell your dad, that was like the most awesome experience. Yeah.
do you think college is worth it?
Listen,
Like,
man.
should we be paying to be here right now? Like, is it worth it? Just like yes or no. I know it's very complicated, but like, what is your opinion on that matter?
It's worth it if it doesn't cost. If you can afford it without really destroying, without digging a hole is so deep that it's not going to destroy you, man. Yeah. And if you can, it's worth taking a year off or 2 years off. If you're not really certain why you're here, take time off.